Egypt announced it has approved the importation of Irish beef this week and will begin the procedures to purchase. The government said it has approved 5 slaughterhouses that will be overseeing the process. No details have been given yet or the amount of beef that will be imported.
Ireland views Egypt as one of the most important markets in Africa. Egypt imported Irish food products worth more than $45 million last year. Egypt banned imports of Irish beef in the 1990s after the mad cow disease hit Europe. That's about 20 years ago. Now that this danger has gone, it is resuming imports from Ireland, especially that other countries have already started importing Irish beef as well.
Opening the door for Irish beef wouldn't have come at a better time. Egyptians consume over 10 million tons of meat annually, but the country can only produce half the amount.
This deal is a good move by the Egyptian government and will benefit the people, especially that Egypt mostly depends on Brazilian beef, Sudanese and Australian beef, and having a new source from Ireland will help lower prices that have increased a lot lately.
The government hopes the competition will force other suppliers to lower prices. The government will also sell the beef at state-owned supermarkets at subsidized prices to push the prices lower and ease the burden on the low-income earners. Maya Mutua, CGTN.
Well, let's get some more on this. Adel El Maroui joins us in Cairo now. Adel, as always, welcome to the show. Now, we know that before Egypt's ban on EU beef in the 90s, Egypt was one of the largest markets for Irish beef. So suddenly this is great news for Irish beef producers. Is this great news for Egypt as well?
Well, it's definitely big news for the Irish production in general, but for Egypt it might be, but there are still very critical information that has still not been announced by the Egyptian government. So you know that as you've heard in the report that Egypt imports about half of its annual consumption of beef products, and the main sources for these they used to be Brazil, Ethiopia, Australia and Sudan. So basically for that to be a good news for Egypt, it means that whatever is going to import from Ireland and the amount that still has not been announced, it has to be at a lower price for it to be for Egypt as a good news, because basically Egypt is going through a very tough foreign currency crisis and it needs to save. That's as simple as it could be. So whether it gets it from Ireland, from any other country, the deal is, or the core point for Egypt is to get it at a lower price. Now, what we've been reading from the reaction from the Irish producers is that they believe that expanding their markets, which has been lately growing to several other countries, whether it's the United States and China and now to Egypt, they are tending to increase their prices as the demand on their product is growing. So it is still challenging, but the details itself, or the precise information about the contract and how much money will Egypt pay for it, that's what will be mainly the main measure to weigh on it, whether it's a good news for Egypt or not.
Well, Adel, like you mentioned earlier, beef prices have been rising in Egypt. We know the government has said it will subsidize meat at state-run outlets in order to make the prices of beef cheaper. But how do you see this news affecting prices in the broader beef market in Egypt?
Well, the impact of that deal has not been significant in the Egyptian market yet. We've seen the baladi, or the local meat, which is favorable to most Egyptians, jumping to about 120 Egyptian pounds. That's nearly $8 for a kilo, and that's a phenomenal number to Egyptians. Because of the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, in the local market, the imported meat from Brazil or other sources is around 80 pounds. That's 1/3 less than the local production in Egypt. So definitely there is a desperate need to push the prices down. Imported meat, frozen meat in particular, because you know the deal with Ireland has two sides. One of that is importing live cattle, which has lots of restrictions here in Egypt, and this is a major breakthrough for the Egyptian government to start opening that side a little bit. Now, for getting into the country frozen meat, that's usually much cheaper. And this is the key, I think, that why the Egyptian government is taking that initiative at this specific time. It needs to push the prices down, and it needs to do that quite fast.
Well, Adel, let's talk about local production. Does this news pose a threat to the domestic beef market at all in the country, which of course we know the industry was already affected by high feed prices?
Well, basically, when you talk to local butchers, they would tell you that. They would tell you that they feel that the demand is becoming less, particularly as the meat prices have been going up lately. But if you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, you see that there's always more demand on beef in general. So the local market only covers 50%, and so far it has never been significantly viewed or a significant matter to see that the magnitude of the imports are surpassing the local demand, and that so far it hasn't happened. So it shouldn't have any effect on local producers. The baladi meat is still by far the favorite for anyone. If you give them two options and they can afford it, they will definitely choose the local Egyptian meat, or as they call it, the baladi meat. So it shouldn't really have a huge effect, but still, it depends on what prices will the new sources of meat will come in. If it's lower than the local imported markets, then this is definitely could have some effect on it.
Well, many thanks, Adel, of course, for that update. Adel El Maroui joining us there in Cairo.